We had drinking water supply for a week. I already f***ed up. There was a rising sound of a falling bomb. We ran like crazy, contaminated with radiation. No safe place in our house. It felt surreal, wrong, and disgusting. In February 2022, there were lots of signs that something bad is about to happen in Ukraine. And many of that signs were pretty straightforward, like embassies evacuating or Ukrainian government declaring the state of emergency. But I was among those people who believed that Russia would never engage into full-fledged war against Ukraine. And I was wrong. 24th of February started with heavy explosions nearby. As someone who lived just 26 kilometers to Russia border, in a small cottage town outside Kharkiv, I was among the first to understand that the war has begun. When floor is trembling and glass is shaking and night outside turns into day because of explosions, the only thing you can think of is getting your wife, cat and yourself somewhere safe. And there was no safe place in our house. Materials used for construction were chosen to be energy effective and not bulletproof. Second floor wasn't safe at all, and on the ground floor there were balcony doors and windows everywhere. Wardrobe was the only place to have 2 walls between it and the street, but it was completely open from one side. So the best overall option was to sit under the countertop in the bathroom. This room had only one tiny window, 2 walls to the street from 3 sides, and a thick countertop for additional protection. With heated floors, it was quite comfortable as well. It was better than to stand outside, but it was not enough. So as soon as I contacted my mother and my friends to give an update on the situation, I started to search for a safer place. One of my friends knew one of my neighbors who had a basement, but by the time I was able to reach him out, the basement was already full with people. Luckily, there were other neighbors who were willing to provide cover in their basements, and thanks to Telegram chat of our cottage town, we were able to contact them. The closest option was just 20 meters from our house, so we took documents, money, some snacks, waited for a pause in artillery strikes and headed out. On halfway there, bombardment continued and we ran like crazy, which is a dumb thing to do because it actually increases your chances to be hit by fragments. The question you may ask here, why the heck didn't you leave immediately? Well, there are 3 points here. First, we thought that all this would end in a couple of days or maybe a week maximum. Second, since the war began, our town was on the front line immediately and it wasn't safe to leave. Third, our things were not packed and I didn't want to leave empty-handed. As it turned out later, this was the wise decision. And why did we think that the war will be over in a matter of days? Well, here are some charts. We thought there was no way Ukraine can hold. Russian strike was sudden and fierce. Their troops progressed fast and on the same day they have reached the Kharkiv ring road. And in a matter of days, Russian troops and engineering was already entering the city. But then something has changed. Ukrainian military was able to hold back the attack and stop the assault. And this way Blitzkrieg turned into a modern type of trench warfare and our cottage town remained in the grey zone or so-called no man's land between 2 armies. Back to our neighbor's basement, which we would later solemnly call the bunker. With concrete ceiling slab, thick brick walls and combined with the brick building above it, this basement was probably the safest place to stay in the whole cottage town. But it had no heating, no electricity sockets and no furniture. It consisted of 2 rooms, one bigger and one smaller, around 30 square meters altogether. I brought 100 meters extension cord, convector and a bunch of chargers and cables. With other men we built a bed out of wood on car tires. The spare slim mattress I had lying at home came in handy. And I brought an air mattress too, to make yet another sleeping place. And the owner of the basement tinkered with scaffolding he had in there to use it as a bed for his kids. And we moved in a couple of outside couches. We used them to sit during the day and to sleep at night. As there were more than a dozen of us in the beginning, my wife and I volunteered to sleep on one couch. As the couch was 160 centimeters long and I'm 178 centimeters tall, the sleeping experience wasn't comfortable at all. But it was safe, warm, and despite heavy stress, we were able to sleep. We couldn't even imagine war in Kharkiv, so we were 100% not ready. And by not ready, I mean not only the complete absence of shelter, but all other things too. Our house fully relied on public utilities. We didn't have any source of backup power, no generators, no well, and no fireplace. And what's most important, we had drinking water supply for a week and food supply for 3 days. No meat in freezer, no cereals, no canned food. We had a bottle of protein powder though, which was medium-sized. We calculated that with strict rationing, we'll be okay for 2 weeks maximum. Our cat was in a better situation as he had canned food for 7 days and dry food for a month. On day 2, my wife took a risky trip with our neighbors and managed to buy some food at a local store in Kharkiv close to our town. She wasn't able to get much, but our food supply has grown substantially. Meanwhile, I was clearing the driveway and packing belongings. We knew that we might leave any moment, so the car should be ready and the driveway should be cleared. If there was one thing I had right, that was a car. It turned out to be well prepared for war and long journey. Full tank of gasoline, full propane tank would be enough to travel more than 1000 kilometers. I had spare wheel, compressor, tire sealant and a full set of automotive fluids. So 10 points for Gryffindor.
10 points for Gryffindor!
When packing things, we followed 3-2-1 backup principle used for keeping data safe. 3 bags total, 2 were on us, 1 was stored in the car, and cash we had was divided across these 3 bags. We couldn't follow the same rule with documents, so each of us had a passport, and all other important documents were in my backpack, which also served as an alarm case. We knew that the car might get requisitioned along with stuff in it, and we should carry on foot. So the backpack was stuffed with some water, some food, cash, 2 laptops, couple of external hard drives with important files, flashlight, small charger and universal cable, watch and jewelry. Backpack ended to be quite heavy, so I was the only one carrying it. And there was a possibility of me getting killed or robbed with no option for my wife to retrieve the backpack. That's why we had a set of similar things packed in the car. I already f***ed up when the war started and put my family at risk, so I wasn't taking any chances. I haven't served in the military due to health issues, but I was constantly on the phone with experienced friends who shared their knowledge. And what's really funny, the books I've read and computer games I've played turned out to be a somewhat decent alternative to a general military education. Day 2 started at the basement. As the situation was more quiet, we decided to head home to eat the breakfast and take a shower. I also planned to set all windows into summer ventilation mode to lower the chance of glass breaking because of shockwave. As our cat Leo was staying at home, we decided to cover all windows on the ground floor with adhesive tape, textile and cardboard to prevent glass fragments from flying inside should the glass break. We had 2 showers at our house, and I went to the one on the 2nd floor. Next active phase of war started, of course, when we were taking shower. And it felt really terrifying. House is shaking, windows are trembling, and the glass in the shower cabin is shaking as well. It feels like an earthquake, except for the fact that anytime a projectile might hit somewhere nearby, or maybe right into the place you're at. I've never run that fast out of shower into the ground floor, and I guess this was the moment when I finally realized that normal life was over. To support my sudden awareness of the situation, the power line to our cottage town was destroyed the same day, short after we returned to bunker. We had a faint hope that it will be fixed soon, and it did turn on a couple of hours later, but this time only for half an hour, and after that it was gone completely. And by the time I'm editing this video, it is still not fixed. With no electricity, temperatures in the basement started dropping fast. In a day or two we got from comfortable +16 down to +8. Luckily, there was a fireplace in the house next to the basement. Sure, it wasn't as safe, but at least walls were made out of thick brick, and there were no panoramic windows in the room with the fireplace. And one neighbor even had a powerful diesel generator that was enough to power up all the necessities in the house. Just one problem. Diesel supply we had would keep the generator running for about 10 to 15 hours more. We needed fuel badly. We live in a world where everyone tells that cash is a no-go. Invest your money. Buy stocks, commodities, properties, crypto. Keep money on your bank account. It's safe, it's convenient. This is bullshit if the world around you is falling apart. Credit limits are telling bye-bye. Stores that are still open don't accept both credit and debit cards. Prices skyrocket, and the only viable option if you want to buy something is cash. Here are the top in-demand commodities during the war, sorted from highest demand. Medicine, especially for diabetics, cigarettes and IQOS hits, fuel, food, alcohol. This list is totally based on my personal observations. As a non-smoker, I have no idea how the heck cigarettes can be more important than food and fuel, but during the war this type of goods becomes very expensive and very hard to get. Same goes for fuel. Gas stations either get closed or used for army needs. We had a desperado guy who managed to bring us 40 liters of diesel. The price was about $5 per liter, and that's 5 times higher than normal, but we got 4 bottles of beer as a bonus. Let's talk prices. Here are some examples how prices changed during the war. Bread went from 50 cents up to $2. Taxi to train station in Kharkiv changed from $15 up to $50 to $250. Expensive cat food disappeared. Cheap one got pricier anywhere from 5 to 50%. Alcohol was banned for sale. Fuel was impossible to get in our region too. Though in those regions where it was still available, the prices didn't go up very much. Though there were limitations on how much fuel a single person could buy. Pleasant surprise, most of the prices didn't change much either, though it was very hard to get anything from the city to our cottage town, except for maybe first 2 or 3 days. One of our neighbors who left the first day let us take his petrol generator and the food left in the house. He has providently left the door opened. Our food supplies weren't large and we had no idea how long we should stay in. And a small petrol generator would be a great alternative to the large diesel one to charge our phones, lights and the 4G modem, which was our only source of internet. That's why we and guys from other shelter accepted this offer and went looting. It felt surreal, wrong, and disgusting. You keep telling yourself that you were granted permission. You are doing so for survival. Most of the food would spoil anyway without electricity. But any argument is not enough to justify the horror of your actions. And then something switches. You proceed, but internal dialogue stops and you become emotionally numb. Now you're just a character from a game like DayZ, controlled by instincts and cold logic. All the way back, we were all silent. Each of us now had something broken inside. Couple of days later, 2 more friends from the cottage town offered us the same, and we went looting again. More food, dog food, firewood. Our friends, unlike us, kept large stocks. We took everything. Now we could easily survive for 3 or maybe even 4 months. And we somehow managed to stock up diesel. Military used damaged trucks to block the highway right next to our town. And those trucks had some tanks intact and full of fuel. But it all could be meaningless, as we had much more serious problems incoming. On the first day, I've gathered all bottles and filled them with tap water, as our town fully relies on water from the city. We've also made a small drinking water reserve at our neighbor, who had osmosis filter. But tap water supply was stable and we lost vigilance. News about water treatment plants' destruction almost caught us off guard. With these plants destroyed or heavily damaged, tap water could become either unavailable or dangerous to use. So we had to increase our reserves using every bowl, every bucket and everything else suitable for storing water. Luckily, those news turned out to be fake and water supply was intact till the time when we left. But all this situation pointed at our vulnerability one more time and sure had a negative impact on our morale. By that time we got pretty used to artillery strikes, tanks and multiple launch rocket systems. We understood what type was shooting, where were they shooting from, roughly where were they shooting at, and if that was far or close to us. We knew if we should head to the bunker ASAP or could stay at the fireplace. And ASAP in this context means you hear strikes nearby, you take the best possible cover right where you're at, and then, when the strikes stop, you rush to the shelter. There were pauses between strikes, and some of the days were quieter than the others, and we used that time to eat, complete work and repairs, warm up near the fireplace, or get supplies. One quiet evening we went for supplies. Everything went smooth, but on the way back we heard a plane. I still don't know if that was a fighter or a bomber, but it definitely sounded like a heavy bomber. We took cover, but perfectly understood that it was more a precaution, because targets for bombardment or rocket strikes should be far from us. Bomber passed above us, and we continued moving as the plane sound became distant. Next bomber appeared shortly, but this time, along with engine sounds, there was a rising sound of a falling bomb. I dropped packages, rushed to a nearby fence, and snuggled up in a ditch under it. 2 thoughts crossed my mind. First, great, this fence is made out of stone. Second, I'm an idiot who will die because of his unsuccessful attempt to bring back sausages and cheese. And then my brain halted. I was listening to the rising sound with clear mind and silent inner hope to survive through the blast. But there was no explosion. When we got back to the basement, we were all pale, hands were shaking, throats got dry and we were overall shocked badly. We drank a bottle of rum, for 3 people and felt zero effect. All the emotional tension accumulated into starting panic among the members of our group. People started to think about leaving, even though it was completely unsafe. We got news that nuclear research facility called Source of Neutrons in Kharkiv, just 2 kilometers away, might be targeted by Russians. Should things go bad, the area would be contaminated with radiation. And at the same time, rumors spread that Russia will use M to fire nuclear missiles. In both cases, our town would be in affected area. Luckily, the news about nuclear missiles turned out to be complete fake. The risk of nuclear installation in Kharkiv getting damaged because of heavy fights in that area remained. And we had no devices to measure radiation levels, so I was constantly monitoring news and, what's more important and more reliable, independent IAEA reports that they were publishing on a daily basis. People from our town started to leave intensively. By the 4th of March, our group was down to 7 people. Now we had even more supplies per person, and my wife and I finally got personal couch to sleep at night. Felt like an upgrade from economy to first class. But weather was getting colder, way colder. Our house was built to keep warmth for prolonged periods of time, but as I have mentioned before, all windows were set to ventilation mode and temperatures outside were decreasing fast. On 24th of February we had +5 during the day and +1 at night. A week and a half later it was -5 during the day and down to -16 at night. By that time the temperatures in the house went from 23 down to less than 10. Here I have to note that comfortable temperatures at home held on for 5 days. And for 3 days after electricity shutdown, we were even able to take hot showers. Though on the 3rd day it was more like not that cold shower. When the temperature inside dropped below 10 degrees, we had to relocate our cat. The basement wasn't an option as the temperature there were even lower, and a house with a fireplace nearby wasn't an option either as it already hosted a dog and other cat. And our cat doesn't get along with other cats and dogs. Luckily there was a free room close to a fireplace in a house with diesel generator. Temperatures there ranged from 12 to 14 degrees, which was much better for our cat. We couldn't relocate ourselves to a warmer basement though. Remember I told you about 8 degrees being cold? How about 4? You may be watching this video from a region where winters are less cold outside than the temperature we had in bunker. Wish we had some kind of high-tech sleeping bags, or at least some ski clothing. Thanks, we had ordinary winter clothing and thermal underwear at least. Key to staying warm at night was getting as much layers as possible between body and the cold basement. Thermal underwear, 2 pairs of thick socks, light sweater, warm sweater, hoodie and winter coat. And 3 blankets, one of them fully synthetic. I'm not a fan of drinking alcohol, but 50 or 100 grams of rum or whiskey or vodka helped greatly. Imagine moving from warm room with a fireplace down to freezing bunker. That was psychologically tense. And an alcohol shot and a cup of tea from thermos was our way to compensate. As colds continued, I contacted the foreman who built our house, and he had bad news. We had to drain water and heating systems. Otherwise, there was a risk of pipes rupturing. On the other hand, there was a risk of getting under artillery strike while draining the system. And staying in the boiler room of our house wasn't much safer than just standing in the street. Now the choice seems obvious, right? Forget the pipes. especially considering that a house may not get intact through the war. L. Logic. I went home to drain the system. Nominee for the Darwin Award. Sometimes I think that both armies waited for me to get somewhere unsafe to start some serious firefights. Artillery, tanks, fighters, gunfire. Intensive battle just like in Call of Duty or Battlefront. Except for the fact that I was draining the system, trying to figure out how to get water out of the heated floor. Luckily I had watering hose that fit perfectly, so I cut a segment and sticked it to the floor heating cone and started blowing. I hated blowing balloons already, now I hate blowing into the hose as well. I blew like crazy, but the results were minimal. I was already going to leave it as it was, but suddenly I remembered about car compressor. Long story short, it worked. It felt like a victory, or like a significant achievement. I was so proud of myself that even shot a short video. While being in the house, I made some more preparations for its long-term conservation. And from now on, we were fully ready to leave any moment. We started receiving info from multiple contacts that the situation is about to get very hot in our region. We didn't know who was controlling the nearby territory. Both militaries were moving constantly and our town was still on the front line. Lack of verified information was the real problem. Each time one of the sides announced humanitarian corridor, the other did not accept that and cease fire. There was a high risk to get under an artillery strike or get caught in the crossfire. Another risk was to be mistaken by military for an enemy using a civil car. One morning I met a guy who made it through to the neighboring village. After having a chat with him, I understood that now is the best time to leave, as I have gathered as much information as I could. I told my wife that we are going today. She was ready. We spoke to our group and left them the keys to our house, so they might take anything that could help. We went home to pack final things, and we left the house in which we put our souls, understanding that there might be nowhere for us to return. We picked our cat at neighbors, we crossed our fingers and left. My wife was sitting on the backside on the right, which in my understanding was the best place, providing the best possible defense in case of rifle fire. Highway was deserted. Luckily we saw the tracks in the snow, which meant that there were some cars passing here not long ago. But we didn't see any, not a single car, not a single person. Only burnt out and abandoned military vehicles. We were moving very slow, maybe 20 or 30 kilometers per hour, with hands high on wheel, so any potential sniper could see that. We saw a destroyed civil car on the roadside, and that sight was horrific. But it was already too late to turn back, so we continued moving forward. Soon we came close to the military checkpoint. We were told to slowly drive closer and show the documents. A couple of questions later, we were free to go. But it wasn't time to relax yet. My wife was constantly worried that we might still get under artillery fire. I tried to calm her down by telling that she should only be worried if the soldiers at the checkpoint start running in search of cover. Few moments later, soldiers at the checkpoint start running as the projectiles start hitting nearby. Military let us take cover in their shelter, and we are really grateful for that. Thanks God, no projectile hit close to our position and we continued our journey. 2 weeks later, with many stops, long lines and traffic jams, we are in Antalya, Turkey, our destination. Well, at least for the nearest future. I wanted to make this video as soon as we get out of the war zone. It should be published almost a month ago, but I got very sick after that, heavily depressed, and could pull myself together just now. I will be trying to be more consistent in future, so put a like and subscribe to this channel to support my efforts. And one more thing, I had a local business in Kharkiv as a main source of income. Obviously it's suspended right now. I won't be asking for any financial help as this would be unethical. But if you happen to have any job on video editing, please consider myself and feel free to contact me using my contact details in the description down below. And thank you for watching this video up until its end. See you in the next videos.